Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast, where we look to empower and encourage real conversation amongst men everywhere by unpacking topics on self-help, philosophy, and business. G'day everyone, it's Matt Hannum here, and with the boys today, the Simple Mind boys. How are we, everyone?
Hey. Like Umbridge at that.
Man. And the men.
Yeah.
You all responded
every hair on my chest.
you all responded to boys.
And
I
Travis.
Boys to men. Were you in that band?
He was that band.
And we've come to the end of the road.
That's not them, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
He certainly
You
wasn't
digress.
in the band.
Yeah, no, not in the band.
Anyway, welcome everyone. Today we have a drink from some boys and men. We're drinking
It's a grenade, mate.
Samurai Nippon sake, which came from Japan. My brother-in-law brought this back from Japan for me a couple of months ago, and I thought, what better place to share
Samurai sake.
an incredibly interesting looking bottle, and I'm sure we can get this on camera, so there'll be a photo somewhere. And
That's from Kyoto as well.
This one is meant to be chilled. Yes, Kyoto as well, and hopefully you guys enjoy. It's a little might be a
Cheers.
little strong for
Cheers.
some of you boys who are not men yet.
This is what hairs on your chest.
Exactly right.
Smells
Does it
pungent.
smell like yeast? It's like yeast, isn't
But
it?
it's rice, right? That's where sake
Is
comes
that
from.
what it is? Okay.
Sake's like a rice something or other.
Oh, you meant to smash that, I think.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not
Oh
a
my
simmer.
goodness.
I think the beauty's all in the packaging on this one.
It could
It's like
be.
vinegar. Whoa.
You have brought some shit drinks, Hannum.
Oh, mate. I got a lovely gift from my brother-in-laws, and they're just shit drinks.
Thanks, brother-in-law.
Mate, you rolled up with a white wine, please.
Was it 2008 white wine? Was it shit? No.
it was actually pretty good.
It wasn't bad, but
This
you know,
actually doesn't taste too different to the white wine.
Oh, come on.
look, it's different.
I think it needs heat.
I think it's in heat.
Oh, it's meant to be a chilled version. Anyway,
Anyway,
Maybe it works on you.
on to the
Which on you, not in
show. So, the show is titled The Myth of Millennial Entrepreneurs. Now, the last 5 weeks or so, we've had some pretty heavy topics on masculinity, responsibility, parenting, and I thought we might lighten the load by talking about a bit of business. But more specifically, I guess, what maybe some of the generations are doing. I read an article recently by David Meltzer, and it was on entrepreneur.com, and it was titled, "Sorry Millennials, You're Not Entrepreneurs." He wrote that the editor of Millennial magazine, Britt Heisen, claims that 60% of millennials consider themselves entrepreneurs. 60%. And 90% recognise entrepreneurship as a mentality. However, the truth shows that millennials are full of shit. The number of people under 30 who own a business has fallen by 65%.
We've got any millennials in this room, though? Oh, with two.
Yeah, there's two.
Who own businesses?
You fucking
Who
muppets.
own businesses. So 65%
You're full of
fall
shit.
since the 80s. And it's now a quarter of a century low, according to the Wall Street Journal. Quarter of a century low is pretty significant. In fact, the average age for a successful startup founder is about 40, and according to the Kaufman Foundation. This group also cites that your 40s are the peak age for business formation.
Boom.
Yes.
With at
High
least
five,
6
Conrad.
to 10 years of relevant industry experience.
That was like 15 years ago for you
Yeah,
guys.
exactly. For formation, mate.
Still being born.
Older entrepreneurs have an uncanny ability to see the need and improve upon a product or service based on practical knowledge. They also have bigger and more savvy business networks to draw from, which is an important point, I think, to note. There has only been one group with rising entrepreneurial activity in the last 2 decades, and that's people between 55 and 65. So it's not millennials, but actually the baby boomerpreneurs that are growing our country's economy. This is talking about the US, but I think this would be common for Australia as well. Even further, a successful high growth company is twice as likely to be started by someone over 55 than 20 to 34.
Yeah, shut your businesses, bitches.
Well, here's my big question. What age were you when you well, I've got a few questions and we'll hit a couple of hard-hitting ones soon, but what age were you when you started your business, and what compelled you to take the chance is where I wanted to start.
This business when I went into business, I was 29.
Started your first business.
Yep, I started without the ones that I was peddling when I was stealing stuff and getting coin for that. But my first legitimate business.
Were you in network marketing?
Selling Tony Robbins cassettes.
We love you. We love you
as well.
We love you, MLMers.
Vinyls back then.
Hell, mate. No, 29. 29, 30?
29?
No, sorry, I lied to you. 31. When I started my first business.
Why?
To be brutally honest, I wanted to get away from the grind at the corporate world I was in. I was at the bank, start my own, take more control over my income and how I use it and how I split that. And it's a Robert Kiyosaki book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, as well as a multitude of other personal situations. Being a single dad also drove more flexibility for me being in business with all that type of stuff. So yeah, probably not the best motivations to do stuff, but motivations nonetheless.
I was the same age.
Yeah.
31? You said 31?
How come you've lost your hair then?
Because I'm now 45 and I've got a receding hairline. I was 31 and I started the business as a kind of... it was because of a young family I had. So we had Emma, who was 4 years old at the time, and Sam would have just been born, so a year old. And Joanne was working full time, or started working full time, and I ended up working from home and had a couple of good contacts from work that I'd been doing for the last couple of years, and ended up with a big corporate that we did some corporate work for, and started there. So it was a very slow process. That was the main decision.
Interestingly, though, that first business I had did blow up inside pretty much a year and a half.
What do you mean, as in?
The forming partners separated after a year. I went into sole practice for a while and then wound that up. So when you're talking about 2034, by the age of 33, I probably was back looking for work inside a corporate.
Yeah. Whereas the lifestyle side for me, it just suited what we were doing at the time, and I took it easy and worked for myself for pretty much until last year, really. Until I've now got Victor on board. I've had part-time people throughout the years, but so yeah, a little bit. It wasn't like a big decision to start a business. It just sort of happened that way, and
everything you put in here, though, I've experienced in the sense that, and then I've got this business that the main business I'm in at the moment. I've learnt the lessons from the previous failures, which were, there was 2 failures before this one. And you're right, your networks are better, you grow as a person, you ask bigger questions, you're not ashamed or embarrassed, because, at the end of the day, you failed twice. If you want to go through it again, then be as ignorant as you want. And so all of those lessons have come through to where I am today and hold real stead. What you said exactly, I tick those boxes like you wouldn't believe.
JB?
I was 24 when I started my business. Why did I start? Well, when I actually look back, it was kind of pushed in some aspects. So what happened? Well, I was always passionate about 3D, which is what my business is now. And I was actually trying to set up this 3D business within the company I was working for previously, because it was a startup, and they kind of didn't believe in it and didn't think it was going to work. But then I guess just momentum and things started to fall in place, and I was already working with property developers and whatnot. And what happened was I started to get a couple side gigs, and what actually happened, because I was kind of the team lead there, they were going to they weren't doing so well at the business, and we're going to make someone redundant. And the one individual which they consulted with me that was going to be was the only individual in the team that had a family. And at the time, I was pretty not that tied down, and I had this thing going, and I kind of volunteered to resign to go start, because I was starting to get the work. I was already working like another 40 hours on top of my normal 40-hour week, so it was just a matter of timing in actually some aspects. And I resigned to try and save that guy, but in the end, I won't go, that's another story for another time, but I ended up getting everyone sacked anyway. But that's kind of, and then from there, it was more of a passion play. I kind of always wanted to be my own boss in some aspects. Ever since I started work, I always kind of wanted to be the top. And so that was good. And then started to get more work, hired people, and then when I had my first hire, that really changed everything for me because I realized there were a lot of people who were also passionate about what I do because I do a very selective niche. And I think it was just a combination of ambition and timing.
Cool. How old were you, Hayden?
19.
19.
I started to get paid to do what I loved, and that was it. I started getting more jobs doing photography, and I'd finished studying. I did 2 years of a 3-year diploma. I'd got my diploma, I just didn't do my advanced diploma. It didn't really interest me doing exhibition, so I went out. I had enough contacts already. I'd started working, still living from home, so didn't have a care in the world. And off I went. Never looked back.
Too easy. Jacob?
25 when I started the kind of major business I'm in now. 28 now, so it's about 3.5 years ago almost. Main reason I started, I never had a full-time job. I was always either studying at school, then I went to uni, and then I realised that I was down a path to become an engineer, didn't want to pursue that, so I didn't finish that degree, studied fitness online and overnight, or at nighttime, sorry. And then essentially my first fitness job was kind of boot camp stuff, and that eventually became the gym. So I've never actually worked for someone else in my current field. Just always wanted to be my own boss and have that freedom. And it's an ironic thing, as you guys all know, there are aspects of running your own business where you do have a lot of freedom. There are aspects where you certainly don't, but I just always wanted to be. So I'm kind of one of these millennial entrepreneurs. It's part of the, I guess, 60%. But entrepreneur is a funny word, and we'll probably get to that at some stage. Is that anyone these days thinks that just if you own a business, you're an entrepreneur, but historically that's not necessarily the case. Like if you own multiple businesses or you're an entrepreneurial person, it means you're moving from venture to venture, or you're like a serial business owner. Like if you own a corner deli, or if you're a sort of single man photographer or graphic designer, you're essentially not.
He's got a couple of businesses.
No,
yeah,
you're not.
That's what I mean. That doesn't mean I currently don't consider myself an entrepreneur. It'll only
Well,
be
you
one.
are, according to these stats, because this is talking about company formation. So it's a US-based bunch of stats. And I actually got across this from...
Person who sets up a business or businesses
Hang on, Matt, where did you
take on
start?
financial risks in the hope of profit.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Yeah, exactly. But the reason I got into this was I was listening to Tim Ferriss speak with the founder of Shopify, and he was talking about, obviously, Shopify, e-commerce store that's scaling at a large level. They're very interested in the growth of, at what age are people starting businesses and what does it look like. But yeah, so I was 25. So it's interesting that we have, we have a 19, we have a couple of 31-ishes, and then we sort of all more or less sit within about a 5-year period, apart from you, Trav, who's a bit of an outlier there. But I was 25, and mine was born out of slightly different approach. I'd done a lot by that point. I was working full-time from 19. Yeah, whatever. Well, it doesn't, just because Trav's younger doesn't make him better, right? You can't see what's been going on in the room. But,
Conrad was giving me the wank sign.
He was. Anyway, Conrad was a bit older, so...
I'm just handing out badges.
That's it. So I was 25.
Conrad's got plenty to give.
I had a bit of a health crisis at that point. I got sick.
So let's start a business.
Well, I did.
Fucking hell.
I hit fucking rock bottom, and I started it. Well, I went and it probably took that much for me to take the action that I needed to take, which was to start a business and do things differently and take control and take control of my time and what I'm doing and find passion and purpose in what I was doing. And I
Throw yourself into more stress starting a business.
basically exactly that. But,
What was the business? I don't know.
well, my first business was construction. Was a fencing company where I saw an opportunity. I actually looked at one to buy or to try and get some funding to help buy for several $100,000, and I was like, I can build this pretty quickly. And sort of proceeded to do that from zero.
And you've stayed on the fence ever since then?
0 to hero.
I did not. I sold the fencing company. But what my question, or my next sort of question is to you guys, the odds are, like, the numbers, it's like 95% fail within 5 years.
Yeah.
And
Can I just ask one question before you go into those numbers?
Sure.
Would you consider your first venture a fail?
No, I'm still doing it, so hopefully it's not a failure.
Same name and everything.
No, actually, it's not. It's a different name, but
Was that just a cosmetic?
MD Design was the name of the first business, and
Yeah.
I needed to get away from my name, number one, even though it's not my name, but MD, Michael Duncan Design. I wanted to get away from design, being sort of, I wanted to get into the creative space and allow a little bit of growth there, which we have done over the last 5 years and really expanded services into the digital realm. So,
Isn't that just a pivot rather than a failure?
yeah, it wasn't a failure. It was
That's
the bit.
renaming. That's
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, it's just a net brand change, I suppose, which would allow for a little bit more scope.
Did you have any failures? Did you fail in the
I-
fencing business? Or?
Every single one of my businesses has effectively failed at some point, but I never, right or wrong, I never stopped. I understood and had a lot of experience in insolvency, and I knew how to where not to get, and I was able to turn them. Like the fencing business effectively failed, and it's because I just lost sight of all the vision, and then I flipped this vision and said, all right, I'm going to build this to sell. I spent 12 months restructuring everything I'd done to provide solid numbers so I could sell it, and I ended up getting an exit. Bankwest funded this guy into it, and no one really sell those businesses.
The purpose to sell was more valuable than the purpose to actually have a valuable business.
Yeah, I didn't want to run it. Because at that point I was still getting lost in I have to absolutely love every little piece of the business. I loved business, but I didn't love what we were doing. And I've now, over a few businesses, just learned to love what I'm doing all the time. It doesn't really matter what the output is. So I haven't had a failure as such, although every one of my businesses has definitely been in a failure position, and I've chosen to push through and make something of it, or make the best out of it, rather than I have wound up. A couple of businesses have been deregistered, and technically my property development company has just sat dormant for about 4 years.
Is that waiting to begin a rebirth?
It will in some way, shape or form, but I wouldn't consider that a failure. I just haven't put an extra project on and started that. But I've certainly had my fair share of failure along the way, but in the collective term, not an actual failure.
Okay, we need to define the failure here. There's no failure, there is failure. What's the failure like?
No, I think failure, I think you can be failing.
I've literally had to wind up businesses and actually
Winding
leave
up
the
is a
country.
different story.
No.
Winding up is a different. For me, it's two failures.
Yep.
I quit, and let's say I don't have enough money. I have to go and place the entity in insolvency practitioner's hands and liquidate it. Or let's say I'm working from my personal, through an ABN, and then I might have to go bankrupt. That to me is a hard failure, and a soft failure is I've shut up shop, I've gone home, I've got a job, and I'm dealing with that $100,000 that I'm still carrying.
So you've done all of them? Are they?
I haven't done that. I haven't done either of them actually. But I've had a position where if anyone looked at my books as an accountant or otherwise, or looked at the financial positions, they'd say, you are done. You're more than done. And I've definitely been in that position.
Yeah.
And I wasn't done. There's always a way. There's always a tomorrow in some way, shape or form. So my question to you is if we know that 95% of our businesses will fail, what is your exit strategy? And if we're likely to be, do you think you could be one of the stats of the 40 to 50-year-olds that start up a higher growth business and achieve that? And what does that mean for where you're at today and your current business?
I'm just on the journey still with my business in its little reiterations along the way. So I'm leaving it as it is and letting it. I don't have an exit strategy. I'd probably have to look up exactly what the definition of a proper exit strategy is. I'm not thinking about exit
strategies. Are you just going to
strategies.
shut it down when you turn 65?
No. I've not thought that far ahead. So I might be a bit different in the way I've approached the business and just let it organically serve the family and serve myself, and number one, serve the clients. And that's always been the focus, is just purely client focus. I've got much better recently from a financial point of view, looking at numbers, working out what needs to happen to reach the budgets, which has helped tremendously. A good accountant. But yeah, I suppose I'm not in a traditional. I don't see myself as an entrepreneur. Definitely not. That word kind of always gives me a little bit of a shiver. That sort of, because there's a lot of wank associated with it, I suppose.
But you're an entrepreneur. By definition, you are.
Yeah. And I'll take it. I'll have a small badge on the inside of my jacket that I won't show anybody. But
And in this instance, I'll say that what they were talking about, or where this is fueled from, is like companies started. So you actually have an entity.
Yeah,
Right?
yep,
And that, so I think there's a lot of people that are, say, freelancers and doing other things. And what I think this is talking about are these millennials that are like, yeah, I'm a boss.
Yeah.
And they might be
Got nothing.
making a few
Yeah.
dollars here and there, but they haven't actually formalized an entity and making,
Yeah.
they don't have a
Yeah.
company. So I think you are, like, in this context, definitely, and I see why you might not like the entrepreneur
Yeah,
word,
that's
but
right.
in this
Yeah.
context, it's talking about you have an actual company. It's a separate legal entity, and it's a business.
in the
definitely,
banking
yeah.
world, where I cut my teeth, if you ever came across an application with entrepreneur on it, you pretty much wrote it off because no one made money.
Yeah.
That's anyone that labels themselves entrepreneurs generally didn't make money. When the label was bestowed upon you, that's what people tended to accept from time to time. So
That's interesting with saying the age sort of thing, because a lot of the biggest companies in the world just now, I mean, Shopify, number one, were started by guys like, Stripe as well. Dude was friggin' 19 or something. I mean, these are extraordinary cases.
There's only a few of them. That's
There
the
is,
thing,
but they are some of the biggest companies.
Yeah.
Have actually
these days there are, some of the
started by
big
some of the youngest
yeah.
guys, but probably in the medium space.
But they've had iterations, right? Too. So that's the other part of it.
And they've probably had mentorship through older people as well, and they've done things right. The interesting guy is Jason Fried from Basecamp.
Yeah.
He's been on Tim Ferriss a couple of times. Fried.
I call him Fried.
Fried. He talks a lot about, he doesn't follow a vision. He just lets his
That's
business.
bullshit, man.
Well, that's where he comes from. He must have a vision for the clients and the business and the product.
The experience he must do because it's such a great product.
But there's I think his latest interview with Tim Ferriss, he talks about, he puts aside that sort of bullshit goals, vision stuff and business plans, and he obviously has plans because he has got a successful business and he's got structure around it, but mentally he doesn't hold himself to that stuff and concentrates on the now and the product and making it the best product possible. So I thought that connected a little bit with me and just sort of concentrating on...
I call bullshit on that. I mean, anyone that would manage a business of that size would have people around him that would be telling him what he can and can't do
he's still
anyway.
He's still got a smallish team though that he uses.
And he'd have a board. He'd have a board. He'd have a government
I don't know.
board.
I'd have to check.
He would have a
I
board.
don't
He
know.
also has a completely remote team. So a remote team needs far more diligence in just how they operate and their planning and everything else.
So it might not
because
be
they're
as we
working
know.
from the
I'm
house.
just saying from a mentality point of view, he's got that. He's working on the business and not looking to structured in the traditional company vision sense, I suppose.
I would say that he's done it. He's happy with where it's at. He hasn't had to come back and repeg it. He's communicated that. There's structures and systems and process to echo that. And he's just now come back to work on what's in the business.
Yeah, well, I'm just going by the interview that I'll have to revisit it actually. I keep meaning to re-listen to it because that struck me when he said it. It struck me when he said it, like, okay, that's interesting. So,
well, the corporate governance alone needs you to have that. That's so in a business that size.
But I mean, this was a super interesting article that you posted. Like, I think given these days with Instagram and a lot of the self-help stuff out there is, and like what's the movie about Mark Zuckerberg?
Facebook.
Yeah, the Facebook one, and it's very hyper kind of centralized being an entrepreneur and the cash and jets and stuff on the gram, and there would be a general sense that a lot of 20 to 30 year olds are creating and starting businesses, but for this to come out is like, yeah, okay. But then when you look within, say, your peer group of, say, everyone you went to school with, then you're like, actually the stats are probably correct in that regards. Like, there's not that many people that like I used to go to school with. There'd be a very small percentage, which is crazy. But with the exit strategy, I think when it's a passion play, you've got to really reconsider at some point. And then like for myself, I've been kind of bruised along the way. So my ambition started out, or vision, as you could say, was extremely big when I started out, because I guess there was a naivety there around what could be achieved and what I could do, and then you kind of go on the journey and you get a few cuts and grazes and bruises, and it does fuck with your mental toughness a little bit, and so that vision kind of sometimes gets smaller and smaller. Well, that was the case for me anyway, and I've had to really revisit that lately, because we held a conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of talk around where our industry was heading. And I guess it's, you know, I think a lot of people also start businesses for the wrong reasons. Like start for that kind of glamour of like, yeah, we're going to grow it and then they're going to get funding investors and then flip it. And
We're going to have beanbags in our
beanbags in our fucking
glass office.
Well, actually, one of the things that, just to cut in, that I was thinking of that conversation on the Tim Ferriss podcast was, that's mostly bullshit. Again, that's a tiny element of people that get funding. So the majority of businesses that started, and certainly one of the challenges for millennials, is post-GFC, a lot of their family have lost net worth. So what's happening is most businesses, if they needed a little bit of funding, were typically funded from personal savings and from some family support, whereas a lot of that's dried up. The whole like get my VC and crush it with millions and have my burn rate is just not, it's only a small section of the market, right? So they've lost, or that there's opportunities are actually fewer for them, which is part of the challenge.
But do you also think, coming back to what we talked about the other week around like grit, because like we just live in a society now where like things are really comfortable. You can make a decent dollar and live really comfortable. That if these stats are true, is influencing a lot of people not taking the risk, like because the desire and the ambition is not strong enough. Like, you know, I look at say even my crew, and they get a comfortable like wage, and they're living well, and like people are staying at home longer as well, like living with the parents like until they're like late 20s and really kind of abusing it in a way. And so you're seeing the rise of, and I'm sure Conrad has a huge exposure to this space where, you know, people are spending more money because they're making more money, but they're comfortable as fuck.
Yeah, I think there was a big trend. I'm not sure about it right now, but back 4 or 5 years ago when I was in the, I guess, the startup space before I started my kind of big venture at the moment, is that a lot of people were more than happy to take the risk using other people's money. They weren't willing to put in the work and bootstrap it themselves, or they were like, well, we've got this idea, and an idea is worth nothing really. And they'll go and they'll get investment, and then they'll burn cash until they get the next investment. And that's a mindset that a lot of people took into it, and I was just kind of get funding, fail, oh, it's not my money, move on. I've had my failure, I've learned from it, I'll get more funding. And that's what was great about that kind of, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, all these businesses came out of that fearlessness of kind of having an idea, kind of getting some cash and running with it, but also a lot of, all those 0.1% that succeeded, there'll be 99.9% that burn people's money who didn't succeed, who we never hear about.
Yeah, because what's also crazy is like there's actually like so much opportunity at the same time, more than ever. So it seems.
So
Yeah.
what about your exit then, Jacob?
I don't currently have an exit strategy. One, because I really only just started the business 3 years ago. Two, because I just perceived myself to be too young, and the business is too young to consider it. Three, because I don't want to have a plan B. I think mentally it's just kind of full steam ahead. And now especially I feel I've dug myself into such a deep hole that a plan B to like wind it up, I just don't think about. That could be a weakness and it could be an issue. Like, how deep does the hole go before you kind of do need to consider an exit strategy?
But what about an exit strategy that has you actually making money?
Yeah, and that's like exactly like Matt's story. I know that we're in a hole at the moment, but I'm still taking action. I'm still moving forward, and year on year we've improved, and next year, or essentially in the next 6 months, we'll kind of get to that tipping point. And therefore I look at the data and I go, every year revenue's improved. We're only just short of profit now, and that's turning around at the moment. And therefore I know that my exit strategy is not leave the business, but just keep working hard, pursue it for 2 to 3 more years, and then that'll all be reversed. So
Do you think like the exit strategy psychologically for yourself would, what you focus on, laws of attraction, would
100%.
would keep
Yeah,
would make
to a
you
degree,
then
like-
questioning obviously straight away that I'm getting out the business.
Yeah.
So like, where are you playing with the
yeah,
business?
my exit
So-
strategy is just keep working hard. It'll turn around. We'll
That's
make
an exit
profit.
strategy.
No,
That's
so-
a management strategy.
So when you're 65,
Yeah.
like you think you're going to be running Movement Co and Aussie Park doing that?
I don't think so. I think due to the nature of fitness, it goes through cyclical trends, and therefore we'll have to pivot and change. I don't think we'll be able to run our current model indefinitely, and especially if I'm only 28 now, at 65, no fitness trend lasts 40 years, and therefore as long as my exit strategy is just to reinvent and change, or to sell out and go into a VR based gym, or find, like, if I'm clever enough to know when it's had its day and move on, my exit strategy will be to not let it just die.
I don't think your goal is strong enough to get you out of the hole or what you're focused on at the moment. At 16, I said to myself I wanted to be retired at 50. And I knew that I had to be retired at 50. Well, I knew that to retire at 50, watching my mum and dad grow up, take care of 3 kids, they earned 50 to, if I was even saying 50 to $60,000 a year, that would be overstretching. That was what the family household income was. And I knew what that number was at 16. And I'm in that position where I'm 47 at the moment, and I can afford to do that. I don't know how I've got there, other than the fact that I knew what those numbers were.
Yep.
And the goal has to be fucking real. It has to stretch you, and you've got to be aligned to it. I don't think you have to see it every day, but you've got to know what you're aiming for. Otherwise, everything else just distracts you. The balance sheet will distract you. The bank account will distract you.
Yeah.
Right? To go from having 20 bucks.
Gram will distract you.
Yeah, go from having 20 bucks, literally $20 when I was fucking 39, to where I am now. The only thing I can tell you is the conversation I had when I was 16. Nothing else would fucking give you the indication I was going to get there. Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've in the last few months had to really reconsider like what is the end game, because like in my space, in the creative space or a passion space, a lot of people just keep doing what they're doing because they're good at it, and they actually, again, like their self-esteem and their ego is wrapped up in that they're just good at that thing, and it just naturally grows over 10 years. They don't really know what they're doing other than just going through the motion, and they're getting paid for it. And so where does the business go? And sometimes it can be almost, I think, a lack of responsibility if you have a couple staff. And not only that, if you actually have a good product and you've mastered a skill, if you just let it die, that's a little bit selfish in some aspects, because you could pass that skill on or enable the next gen to come through and take it over. Because I think there was a conversation many times, and Matt, you were in that space, like it's, like a lot of businesses sometimes, like when they get to, they just shut shop, right? Because they don't know what to do with it.
They haven't built something that's saleable, and they just milk some income out of it and then close it, which is
because everyone talks about fucking legacy.
But I mean, I always say this, and I think I've said to you guys, probably at breakfast recently. We're all in the game of running a business. The skill set you have doesn't define you higher than that, because you're responsible to the business, to that entity. Your skill set is just your job. All right. If we're going to define ourselves as creators, as photographers, above and beyond being an owner of a business and the responsibility to go with the business, you're going to set yourself up for a fucking trip. Because having a business has responsibilities that you have to take on. All right, you're not just a PT. You're a business owner in the game of physical fitness.
Yeah, and my role and responsibility is probably 90+% business, and like fitness and being a coach is a part of what I do.
That's your product. That's your product. But you have a business, and the business means you should know your numbers, you should know your ratios, you should know the actions that everyone that you're employing should be doing, including yourself.
Yep.
And if it's not successful, then you've got to come back to those leads, which is, well, what needs to be done that isn't being done? That's the business. Now, we can delude ourselves as much as we want. All right? You're in the business of graphic design and digital whatever, Michael.
That's pretty much how I define it as well.
Okay, but you're in the business.
Yeah.
All right, so you're responsible to the issues that businesses have to deliver on.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, you're now responsible to a staff member.
Yep. Which has been a big step for me.
Right, so they're the things. Though I keep saying this to people, like I show up for my staff and my team, because if I don't do that, I'm not being responsible in business. If I run my balance sheet ignorantly, I'm not being responsible in business. I mean, apart from, as you would know, running an insolvent business is a criminal offence.
Mm-hmm. Sure is. Most people don't see it that way.
No, they don't, but it is a criminal offence. And if you don't look at these things as the responsibilities you have, then should you actually be in business? And I went through that the hard way. I had to learn. I didn't learn that through fucking MBA school or any sort of. I learned that by having 2 failed businesses and one that went into liquidation. And then what right do I have to go and start another business after I just fucking liquidated one? Well, I did.
But see, that's not uncommon, and I think you need to learn a lot of that you can't textbook a lot of that. It's even the experience I had in insolvency accounting was a whole different world when I was out there doing it as the person responsible, not the person standing there with the Corporations Act behind me telling people what they could and couldn't do and how to go about it. We had a very strict guidelines on how we had to trade businesses. We had very strict guidelines on it. If it didn't make a profit for like 2 days, we had to shut it.
Yeah.
So we had really strict guidelines that most of us, if we applied to our business, we would have shut our doors
100%.
Hundreds of times over.
7 times in a week.
which is scary. But so the point is, like, probably a bunch of businesses in this room will fail. Probably.
But that's
within
okay.
time. And it is okay because
that's the way you're meant to learn.
If
you don't learn when you've got it, or you're not valuing the experience, then the universe, divinity, God, whoever, the Muppet Show will shove it down your neck.
Yeah. So, Hader, I wanted to ask you quickly, because I think you're the only one that hasn't really answered. We know, Conrad, you're working on an exit at this point anyway.
Yep.
And then I wanted to just wrap up with the question, like, what should millennials do? So if you just want to let us know.
Yep. So for anyone that doesn't know, I have 2 businesses. First one being I'm a freelance photographer. No real exit strategy on that. I can see myself doing that in some capacity for a long time. Pewter, I'm manufacturing that into a sellable product. My exit strategy is to sell it. That's already in the pipeline. Whether if I sell it in 12 months or 3 years, I have a goal. But yeah, we'll see from there. What millennials?
Can I ask you? Are they based on profitability numbers, or what's the
To sell it?
Yeah.
Well, because I took it from nothing, I want to just sell it for a profit.
Have you put a number on that?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
So to sell it for a certain amount of money, that's my goal.
So a number, so a top line profit number,
Yeah.
and a time frame.
Yeah.
So that's the goal.
Yeah.
All right. And how often do you reflect on that?
A lot, because it's fast approaching. Yeah. The question of millennials, I say do it, because you can't be in a successful position to succeed in your 40s and 50s if you haven't had the experience and the opportunity to learn from your failures in your 20s and 30s. Because if you're going to sit there and not do anything and sit on your hands until you're 40 and 50, are you really going to succeed in your 40s and 50s? Because I can guarantee you there's going to be a hell of a lot of businesses that still fail in your 40s and 50s. That would be my
Yeah, I mean, the number I'd love to know is how many of those that are successful in that time frame have come from failures earlier.
Yeah.
That'd be good to know.
Can I quickly add, like when I went to start my business, I had a phone call with my granddad who ran a business and sold it, and he exited. And he goes to me, how old are you? And I go, 24. And he goes, what the fuck are you like worrying about a decision? He goes, you can fuck it all up and just start again. Yep. You'll be like 20, you'll be 25, you know? So like, to me, that was almost the nail in the coffin for me to pull the trigger. I was like, oh yeah, you know, like that kind of comfort that you can just go again.
You don't see it like that though. I mean, in the moment, I know I never saw it like that. I saw it as a big smack in the face. Well, the first time, the last time it happened, I saw it as an opportunity. Went straight into opportunity mode. Like from the first failed business to the next business venture was a few years that I had to get through the self-doubt, the lack of belief, all that other negative bullshit that when I went through it all, to get to the level of comfortness within myself to take it all on again, because again, it was accepting responsibilities of getting back into business. And did I want them, and did I want to get away from the lifestyle I already created for myself for it?
Yeah, I guess because business is a skill set in the same way that whatever your skill that you're turning into a business is a skill set. Whether you're 20 or 40 or 50 or 60, you may be a skilled lawyer, you may be a skilled photographer, you may be a skilled graphic designer, for example, but you still then need to learn the business skills. So if you've been working for someone else within their business for a period of time, you're still going to have to go through that learning curve. And when you're 20 or 25 and you're unmarried, you haven't got children, you haven't got a mortgage, that's the perfect time to to try it, to go through those couple of failures, to learn that skill set, and then you can apply it. Granted, too many young people start a business before they actually have a skill set. You can't start a photography business before you're a photographer, for example. So you kind of need some skills to build on, but when you're young is the perfect chance.
Yeah, just to build on that, and if you're fearful of that, then get close to someone who's doing it. That's another way you can at least get yourself closer to the needle. Get yourself a job. Understand and respect that you might be earning a little bit less than you might somewhere else, but get in a position where you can understand what it looks like, closer. And that's still a very viable approach. And then that might give you the confidence to make a start next time, and then you might hit 50 and start again. I think there's probably multiple people in this room that will start a business again. I mean, I didn't really share my piece, but look, my current goal is I've got a three-year window till I turn 40, and then I have a choice to either sell, to look at a management type buyout of some staff members, or retain. And what I want to do at that point is do more investing. So I want to reduce my time within the business. That my target is 3 years, but I don't have a specific sort of exit plan, other than I have a few variables and I'm putting a time frame on it. So I'm not just sort of sitting there. I have a purpose to get it ready to a point by then. But anyway, that's it for the episode. Thank you, gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your sake. It doesn't appear as though you were ready for it today.
It tasted, I think by the time I actually warmed it up, it ended up tasting like coconut water.
Oh, that's probably a good thing.
Well, I could drink coconut water.
Alcoholic coconut water. I'm sure there's a market for that.
I reckon there is.
Check with Bacardi.
Oh, they got coconut?
Well, it's kind of, anyway, whatever. All right, that's it for the episode. If you're listening on iTunes, please leave a review. That would be amazing. We're also on Spotify, YouTube, and in many, many other places. Seriously, just Google us at Simple Minds Podcast.
Would they find us if they simple-minded us? If
they should be able to find us if they just Google at Simple Minds or Google Simple Minds Podcast. And
something will pop up.
You'll find many things in many places, and have a listen, have a like. Yeah. Please share.
Look for the orange.
Look for the orange or the orange and white logo. Please share with a friend. We do this show, we invest a lot of time into it, and we hope that you get a lot out of this. And we'd love if you would be kind to us and share it with someone that might want to hear. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Pleasure's been all mine.
Okay.
No.
See ya.
Ciao.
No, not really.